We're going to talk to Chad Koppie. He is, in fact, well, he's several things. He's been a farmer. Now, Chad, you're with me. Were you really like a big jet pilot?
Oh, yes. I flew the biggest and the best. Yes, sir.
Is that right? And you were with Delta, right?
I'm retired now.
Yeah. Well, at least you flew them. So did you fly 777s and 747s or what?
Well, the big airplane, the last one that I flew was a Lockheed L-1011.
Ooh, I love those.
That was similar to the 747, but it was built by Lockheed instead of Boeing.
Yeah. I had a pilot tell me one time that when he landed a Lockheed L-1011, he really couldn't see the runway when he touched down because of that nose-up attitude that plane has when it comes in.
Exactly. I landed in Munich one time, had that same exact experience. In other words, it auto-landed all by itself, and it was the only one that could do it at that time. But if you really had a tight approach to make, like we was making into Munich at that time, the nose was still in the fog and you had to let the nose down in order to see the runway, and then you didn't see the runway. You saw the center line lights is all you saw.
Yeah. Nothing to make it a little more exciting. You've just got an L-1011 full of people. That's no big deal. You've also been a farmer for many, many years, and I know you've been on part of the school boards in the area where you live. So doing things and taking care of people is nothing new for you, and now you want to do it from the 7th Congressional District. And we'll talk about that in a little bit because that's going to be quite a challenge for you, because I think the 7th District, from what I know, in the greater Chicago area, there's probably nothing right now that's more Democratic than the 7th District. So peace on you for tackling a giant. But I was talking before you came on about Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas. Now, Mr. Mayorkas, I don't think has been a friend to the country or essentially friends to people. And where you're at in Chicago, a lot of the mess that's coming across the southern border, it's ending up in New York, it's ending up in Miami, it's ending up in San Francisco, L.A., and it's ending up in Chicago. Is this issue with these people coming across getting to be a pretty large issue for the people there in Chicago?
That and other aspects of it, it goes right now. The big issue with is not so much the meth is big time, and the fentanyl.
Uh-huh.
It's killing people left and right, and Chicago has got its share of dead people because of fentanyl coming across the border, and that is a concern to the community there, and like you said, it's mainly a black community. And, of course, Black Lives Matter, we know about that.
Mm-hmm.
And what they also are so concerned about is the influx of these people coming in, and they're getting treated like royalty, and they're even taking them and putting them in the finest places there is available, or they're just moving people out to move them in, while the people in the black community are still living in the ghetto. And they understand clearly what's going on, and they're not happy with the Mayorkas-Biden situation.
Do you think that presents an opportunity to you, that you can come in now where maybe 4 years ago that was not as large an issue as it is now, and it really could make a difference in the 7th District?
Well, there's a populist movement all over the country that's going on right now. Mm-hmm. In other words, people are becoming fully aware of the Biden administration. And, of course, the people are fully aware of a good share of the people are fully aware of the idea that it is not Biden. Biden is nothing but the puppet on a string. In other words, he's following rules and regulations, or not rules and regulations, but the edicts of the world government people.
Right.
So what is happening there is the Mayorkas situation is that he is just another small cog in the big wheel.
Yeah, well, and like the Secretary of Defense, I think he's a pretty large wheel, but we're not even sure exactly where he is. My understanding is he's still in the hospital. That was a weird mess, wasn't it?
It was. What was the secrecy all about on that? Why didn't we know? Why wasn't that published right off the bat? That should have been. That's a very serious matter.
Yeah. Well, and I hate to say this about the Secretary.
And he's the guy that he's got the football.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, and I hate to say this about the defense secretary, but with Secretary Austin, he is still in the hospital. So this is becoming quite an elongated issue. He had that surgery. He went back in on the 1st. Today is the 11th, and he's still there. And the only thing I've heard out of the White House is, well, when the president talked to him last Thursday, it was a very cordial phone call. Great.
If a call at all, you know. In other words, there's so much confusion and lies that goes on from the administration that you can't trust anything that they say or do.
Well, no, that's exactly right. Do you think with the Republicans that are in Congress right now, should you get elected in November, you would take office next January? But with the Republicans that are there and some Democrats that are starting to now get on board and to say some things. I think some Democrats in Congress, if they represent districts down near the border, I think they're going to have to look at this really long and hard. Do you think that there is an impetus on Capitol Hill enough to actually get Mayorkas out?
Well, it's going to be extremely difficult because of that tremendous power that they have seized. In other words, the power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. We all know that.
Yes, sir.
But the next thing about it is that to fight that huge power. In other words, those people sit right there and under questioning in congressional hearings and one thing and another from some most serious questions, and they'll just just not even answer and sit there and smugly and smirk at the senators and congressmen that are asking the questions.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, the little side eye, the slant of the eye, the smirk. Yeah, I hate that stuff. Let me ask you this, Mr. Koppie. This is an election year, a major election year. I mean, the office you're going after, which is Congress, that's every 2 years. So, yep, it's going to be in there too. But the presidential election, before we get to the seat you're running for, do you think, because to me this is bigger than impeaching Mayorkas, do you think that the migrant crisis will actually be a major part, a major player in what it is that happens this election?
Well, the only thing I can say relative to that is that we can certainly hope that that's going to be a major impetus for the people to come out and vote against what is happening there, such as let's impeach Mayorkas. And if he is not impeached, and will he get convicted?
Right.
You know, in other words, they still got to get him through the Senate, and the Senate, and that's the question that you're asking: are there enough senators in there that would convict this guy? Okay, so when that issue with. In other words, I don't think that the time will allow for him to be impeached and convicted between now and election day.
Right.
So they would, to answer your question, of course, the answer to that I would have would be that I doubt that he's going to be impeached or convicted, and therefore the issue is just like it is in the 7th Congressional District where I'm running. It's going to become a major issue. It's going to have to be.
Yeah, I don't see any way to avoid it. We're talking to Chad Koppie. He's from up there in the Chicago area, the 7th District. If you take the middle of Chicago and you go west from Lake Michigan out toward Elmhurst, and then if you go down through the center there, I think your district goes just west of the Miracle Mile, doesn't it?
Exactly.
Yeah. So it's a big part of what goes on in Chicago. It's also extremely Democratic, but I think even Democrats are coming around on some things. I've got a couple of stories here, Mr. Koppie, that I'm going to get to later in the program, where you've got some Democrats going after each other because of the migrant problem. So is it the migrant problem the main thing that has pushed you to run for this seat for the 7th District there in Illinois, or do you just think it's like maybe one of the top 2, 3, or 4 issues?
Oh, I'm for every major issue that's on the table. In other words, we're talking about weaponizing the legal system to imprison conservatives, and such as Donald Trump, and then they take it right on down to the school board and arrest people that are the FBI and going to the abortion clinics and picking up people. And it's there's just so many issues. They print money like there's no tomorrow. The 2 million illegal migrants coming through and polarizing the world against the United States and uniting our enemies against us, advocating for surgical mutilation of the children and things like that in the name of transgender. And then what they do is take these 10 transgender guys, put them in prison.
Yeah.
And first thing you know, they're impregnating the women prisoners.
Yeah, I know. It's absolutely insane.
There's no end to it.
Well, no.
I'm fully aware of all of this situation. In other words, I'm not a single issue candidate. I'm fully aware of this massive problem that's the destruction of the United States is the goal.
No, that's exactly right. And you can see that implosion setting up in the interior of our country. And if we're not real careful, if we don't start calling things into question, the border, the money that we spend. In fact, I just did a story on $1 billion worth of equipment and weapons sent to Ukraine. And not the Republicans, but the DOD OIG now says that personnel in Ukraine did not do what they should have done, and that there's $1 billion of equipment we can't find. That's kind of an issue, isn't it?
Oh, it's maddening. An issue is not even a word. It's treacherous. You know how treacherous is spelled.
Yeah.
It's pretty close to another word that's very serious.
You're exactly right. Hey, listen, Mr. Koppie, thank you so very much, sir. Unfortunately, us, as everybody else on the air, the clock is our enemy, and it has sucked away all of our time. Best of luck to you in Illinois 7th. I wouldn't mind getting together with you again in about 3 or 4 months just to see how the campaign goes there. We're in Fort Wayne, Indiana, but Chicago influences a lot sometimes of what happens here. You're on the air right now with the biggest Chicago Cubs fan on the planet, so it's kind of a deal.
Good for you. You're talking to another one.
All right. See, I knew I liked you. So, Mr. Koppie, thank you so very, very much, sir. And we'll be back with you again in the future. I appreciate very much you making time for us today.
Thank you for calling, and I'll no doubt to be available at your convenience.
There you go. Thank you so much, sir. Chad Koppie, they're from Illinois. And look, it is the most Democrat district in all of Illinois. Okay? I didn't say that. Chad didn't say that. The Cook Partisan Voting Index rates it Democrats plus 36. You've got to overcome 36% of the vote in order to get elected if you're a Republican. Not easy. I personally think people, even in Democratic districts, are getting a little tired of what's happening and about to happen with them and their family and their schools because of everything going on. And I think you're going to see a lot of this play out as we move forward. And we will get back to that. I'm going to take a quick break. I'll be back straight ahead. This is Pat Miller on WOWO 92.3 FM, 1190 AM.
Podcasts by Federated Media.